So, welcome to Job Hunting in the Strange New World. I'm Brian Martin, your host, and I'll be talking about job hunting for everybody that's looking for a job one way or another. And if you're not actively looking for a job, you should be, and I'll tell you all about why you should be during the talk. I do have an extensive amount of notes. This is from a much longer presentation, a day-long presentation that has been chopped down to a 1-hour quickie, so I will have to refer to my slides. Sorry about that, it turned real techy. It happens. The job market that we find ourselves in today, depending on who you are and where you are in your personal arc, is much different than it has been in the past. Things have been changing radically and rapidly, and things are weird now, which is what prompted me to start talking to people about how to enter the job market. When I was teaching in college a long time ago, I had kids coming to me asking me, how do I get into information security? What do I do for my technology? How do I get in? And they would tell me stories about the assistants that they dealt with for career advice and what they were being told that was just plain wrong. So I started coaching and getting into helping people enter the job market in a more graceful fashion. And it turns out that has gotten more and more important as time has gone by. Now we've got professionals that find themselves suddenly out of work, reminiscent of things that we went through in the 70s and 80s when entire industries shut down. Was anybody else in here affected by the tech layoffs in the last 2 years? Yeah, it was quite brutal. And if you do the math and go back and look at the numbers, we lost over 350,000 jobs over the course of 18 months. And that went largely unremarked on by media. They would note that Facebook was laying off 10,000 people and Microsoft was laying off 7,000 people, but they never aggregated it and mentioned that, oh shit, this is bad. And people were on the market for a lot longer and had to change jobs and re-examine what they were doing professionally and started coming to me, asking me questions about this stuff. And then it happened to me. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. I never have once in my life been out of work for any length of time. And all of a sudden, I'm like, why can I not find a job? There's all these jobs listed. What is the problem? What's going on here? And so I started digging into it. And then, as a result of that, I put together a lot of this material, changed what I was given to the kids and the people on the job market. And if you follow this plan, you will find a new job. I'll also tell you why it's important for those of you that have a job to be thinking like this. Why is my clicker not working now? Yeah, I can do that. There we go. Who knows? Magic. So this is the outline of what we're going to talk about. It's pretty basic. The agenda is fairly simple. We're going to do about 10 minutes per section, so we'll burn through them. There are numbers on each slide. If you have a question and I don't see you, or you don't want to ask it right now, just wait till the end. Just remember what the number of the slide was you had the question on, if it's important. The typical bit about me, I've done a lot. I've worked in multiple verticals at expert level over decades in all kinds of different environments, including Europe, the military, government, private, nonprofit. I'm all over the place, which gives me a very unique perspective on how a lot of this stuff ties together. I would very much like to save anybody in the process a lot of time and agony that comes when you're engaged in this particular market. So hopefully this will help. I'm on LinkedIn if you need it. Feel free. Everybody should try and expand their network every opportunity they get, preferably with valuable people. I like to think that I'm somewhat valuable. I know him. He's very valuable. So, but some caveats about what I'm going to say here. This is opinion. It might be experienced opinion, it may be great opinion, but it may not apply in your circumstance, and it may not jive with what you think is more appropriate. So take everything that I say with a grain of salt, and understand that not everybody has to have a resume That's a very rare situation, and since you should just have one. But you don't have to. Sometimes jobs just fall into your lap. That's the best kind of job, I think. But nothing in here is set in stone, and there's no laws. But not following a process, a typical process, is a very rare situation. So I encourage you to follow some kind of process, even if it differs from what I have here. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the preparation aspects of it. You will get the best results from preparing for this operation ahead of time. The worst situation to find yourself in is being suddenly and unexpectedly on the job market with no preparation. We all know that we should have, well, hopefully we all know that we should have some savings. How much savings should you have in case of a problem? Anybody? 6 months, good round figure. You should have 6 months. What if that's not enough? Whose couch are you going to sleep on? Are you going to be able to pay the mortgage? Where can you get more money? How do you tap into your IRA? Is it legal to tap into your IRA? All of these different contingency aspects of, oh dear, I have a problem, can come up and be very important to know about before they become an immediate problem if you're going to maximize the opportunities. So in order to do that, we're going to need to get some baseline facts about ourselves and other things in order. And tracking the data and making sure that you manage it appropriately is one of the ways you can ensure quality progress through the process. So first we have to know ourselves. What kind of work structures do we like? Do we like bureaucracies? Do we not like bureaucracies? Some of us hate bureaucracies. Other people thrive in them. Can we work in a startup environment? Startups are brutal. I've done 4 of them now. At least 4. Longest 72-hour days I've ever lived. Sleeping under your desk to roll a version is a real interesting experience. You got to put the equipment somewhere. Can't sleep in a server rack. Another big difference is, do you like the city life or don't you like the city life? And another big differentiator is, can you self-direct? If you cannot manage your own affairs adequately and you need an external structure, then you're going to have to work for somebody else. Trying to work for yourself or being like, I'm going to start up a consulting company, that can be quite the shock if you've never done it before and you don't have good advice, because it is brutal. You are the boss, you are the worker, you are the person responsible for making payroll, and when you don't do that, there's nobody else to blame but yourself. Kind of sucks sometimes. But relocation is another big one, because most of the jobs are where? They're in the cities. Well, we can all work from home now, can't we? Ha ha, the last 6 months have put that one to bed, haven't they? So we're all back in the cities now, well, most of us. There are some tech jobs that are remote. There are some sales jobs that are remote, that will always be remote. There's bugs in here. So there are things, adjustments that you can make to your lifestyle that fit into whatever it is that you want to do. I know a programmer who is also in the Forest Service that sits on top of a mountain watching for fires and programming on the side. He makes about 10 times what the Forest Service pays him as a programmer, but he gets to live in like a Yosemite type environment, which is probably really cool. He digs it, so good for him. I will not relocate. That drastically limits what I can do, the jobs that I can apply to. I have a commute limit. That's an internal thing that I impose because of my family needs. Theoretically, I could uproot everybody and we could move to someplace else, but it would be very painful. When you're young and the opportunity presents itself, I encourage you to travel. I spent 10 years in Europe working for different companies and businesses and stuff, and it was a wonderful time. On the other hand, there's also limitations like licensing. I can't be an airline pilot, not because I'm incapable of being one, but because I don't have a pilot's license. This is another aspect of things that I could change if I really wanted to. I'm not going to go to that much effort to become an airline pilot, plus it doesn't pay that well. But the limitations that we create in our minds affect what we can do and what we can't do, and it's It's good to be aware of what you're imposing and what's imposed upon you. You can chart all of this stuff and put values on it. For example, when I'm looking at jobs in New York, whether it's upstate or on the islands, I can assign values, I can input figures for commute costs, parking costs, hotel costs, different things, and I can determine just looking at a job before I even apply if it's cost effective. This is another thing that it's good to be prepared about ahead of time so that you know, I can actually fly on a commuter airline to San Antonio and work in San Antonio full time, and it's cost effective. That expands your market of opportunities. So figuring out your place in all of this is not just about where you want to work, but also what you want to do. Knowing that professionally, geographically, maybe you're a skier, maybe Utah is like, yeah, boy, I want to work in Utah. Great, go. Enjoy the ski life. There's plenty of ways to make that work. But maybe you want to work in the Dominican Republic, like I did over COVID. While everybody was trapped in their house, I was in the islands with a coconut on streaming meetings, having a grand old time. Because they were open. Why not? And costs were ridiculously low. Being flexible, mobile, remote office, that sort of thing, you can take advantage of those things when they happen. So that's one benefit to that. So when you know yourself, you can start to figure out more of where you're going to fit into all of this. And if you narrow it down professionally and geographically, you'll be able to reduce your search set to something that is useful and that you can act on. You can use search tools and your network to help you identify additional professional targets. But, I mean, does anybody in here not know how to Google the top 10 bread manufacturers in America? I mean, that's the kind of thing we're talking about. Where do I want to work? Okay, I know that. Great. Now Google, who are the top 10 in this industry? That's pretty much all you need to know to get your top 10 application targets, right? Software, hardware, things like that. It all works no matter what you're doing there. Another thing to consider before starting out is that this is an endurance event. The best time to be looking for a new job, hands down, is while you still have your old job. The best time. And because of the uncertain nature of business and life in general, it's always good to maintain this sort of outlook and awareness of where jobs are while you're still employed. And have that, because you never know, an opportunity might just drop into your lap. You're like, oh, I wasn't really looking for a job, but they offered me twice as much money. Go. All of these slides are available on the share that you'll see at the end, so you don't have to take pictures. But you may feel pressured about finding a new position. Don't rush to judgment. Don't leap into the first thing that comes along. Some of us, when we suddenly find ourselves unemployed, we're like, I gotta have work, I gotta get a job. And we take the first thing that comes along that even remotely matches, and then we get in there and we find out it's a nightmare. And now we're stuck there. We may have changed part of our life to make it work, whatever, but now you've imposed a new set of limitations upon yourself. As long as you're comfortable with telling that employer after 6 weeks that you're leaving, not a big deal. But if a friend gave you an advantage there, someone in your network said, yeah, I'll hook you up. Now, if you leave after 6 weeks, you're going to be burning that bridge, or at least making it very unfriendly. So you need to be very aware of your time limits and understand when you make choices that they may have other effects. Contingency planning. We talked about the financial needs. Okay, so one of my favorite quotes to use in all of this stuff is this one, save your money. Anybody know where that's from? Huh? No, the quote. Oh, I thought the picture, sorry. The quote's from, you don't know where that quote's from? I mean, that picture's from? You say Vallejo. What book was that on?
D&D Monster Manual.
Close enough. Yeah, it's one of the D&D manuals from 3. Might even be 2. It's the old stuff, the original hardbounds. But anyways, that is from a song that I was playing earlier. Never mind. I guess that one will just slip by us. All right, so when you're doing this and you're looking at all these different things and talking about what jobs to apply for and stuff, you need to keep track of certain aspects of it, more or less. I mean, a lot of this comes down to how bad is it? Because if you are employed and you're just doing this casually, then you don't really care about this stuff. And if you just got laid off and you've got 6 months of severance, yeah, we need to be working on it, but we don't need to be working on it right now. Let's go out and have some fun. And then when it gets down to the pinch and it starts to become important and you're like, I've got 2 months of money and bills that are going to run out then, now you might want to know what's the most efficient way I can go about doing this process. So little things like how long it takes to get hired, how long it takes to, in particular, how long it takes to parse an application, and we will talk about why that's difficult. If you haven't had to go through this process yet, everybody thinks that they can just go on LinkedIn and pull up jobs and find something that matches and apply for that job. Magic. And if you're lucky, that will actually work. For the majority of us, that will not actually work. If you look at how many people have applied, you'll see this job came out an hour ago, and there are 400 applicants. Wow, that's a lot of people typing really fast. But that's the good news. The good news is that there's 400 applicants for that real job. But you're assuming that it's a real job. So, keeping track of how long some of this stuff takes and where you are in the management tree here is important because it tells you how long you need to be prepared for. 6 months is a nice figure, but if you're in senior management like I am, whoo, baby, that 6 months is hopeful. That's why we're all consultants at this level so that we can do consulting on the side and keep paying our bills. But at the same time, it's like, God, I just need to find a spot. There's less positions open the higher you rise in the hierarchy. Scheduling is also important. The reason that we want to schedule this stuff is because we all have a tendency to avoid things that we don't want to do. And after your second application on LinkedIn, your lizard brain will start telling you that the lawn needs to be mowed and the laundry hasn't been done in 2 days. Because anything is better than going through another applicant tracking system application online and plugging that in. They ask you for your resume, which has all of your information, and then it ignores it. Or it puts it in the wrong places and you have to go back and do it, and it's a very tedious process. So you'll start to have reasons to avoid the job hunt process. Scheduling it, I mean, if you're out of work, job hunting is your job. So this is an 8-hour a day, this is what you're supposed to be doing. Back to that whole thing about can you work for yourself, can you be self-managed? This kind of thing can become very important if you need a structured environment. And I encourage you to get external assistance with that, like a spouse or a friend, and be like, how many jobs did you apply to this week? And just keep track of minor metrics like that to make sure that you're making progress and doing things. But now you can also fall into this trap of, look at all the metrics that I did, just like we get in reality, and they're meaningless. I applied for 100 jobs. Great. Were they, legitimate? Or was it just garbage that you applied to? If you don't know the depth and how things are put together below the covers there, then it can sound good, but you're actually just wasting time online playing war games. And if you haven't been there yet, you might, talking from experience here. So how fast you burn out in this process is important, and we're gonna try and establish some structures here to limit what goes into it. Understand your limitations and how much time to spend. Because even though this is a full-time thing, it's not your life, right? You still have got to have a life. I don't care how desperate you are for money, you cannot apply for jobs 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just like anything else, you'll burn out and it'll be bad. So you have to take time for family. You have to take time for friends. You have to take that self-care time. You have to look at your care network and get additional. Go out to dinner once in a while, even if you're broke. Figure out how to make it work. All right. So the most important piece of paper that we're going to have in this process is the resume. This is effectively a calling card, and yet it is completely unimportant. For starters, you need 2 resumes, at least 2. But breaking down the systems that we're dealing with in this process, we have the humans, like handing you a resume. I bump into you at a convention, And you're like, wow, you do that and you're looking for work. I know a guy. Do you have a resume? Yep, here you go. Whip that sucker out. Put it on your phone, have it on paper. I don't care how you have it, but have a resume, a general resume, that is readily accessible that you can give to somebody that is trying to help you right away. Because if you don't, you will forget their email. They will give you the wrong email. You'll write the phone number down, and that potential good contact will evaporate. And you don't want to take that chance. You need to make these connections the first try. Electronic is great, physical is great, whatever. Same thing for business cards. Everybody should have a business card, even if you're not a business person. It's your contact information. Some people don't like to scan barcodes. Some people don't want to Bluetooth your connection. Whatever the reason is for them not connecting to you like that, make sure you get that connection set up appropriately. LinkedIn's great. LinkedIn is nice, but sometimes you want a little bit more. But the resume in particular, when you're job hunting, is the thing that tells the world what you're up to. But your resume that you're giving to a human is not the resume that the ATS likes. It looks good, it breaks down cleanly, you can use formatting, you can make it a good presentation of yourself. But when you shove that into an ATS, which is the applicant tracking system that everybody uses for hiring these days, it's gonna try and digest that. It does not like bullets. It does not like horizontal lines. It does not like new lines. It doesn't even like the top row of characters above the numbers. So even if you used asterisks for bullets, it is probably still gonna barf. So your ATS resume is going to be like one step up from a notepad file, like raw text. And it doesn't matter how bad it looks, because the only person that's going to see it is the ATS. And the way that you make this work is you put it in, you do the ATS thing, hopefully it ingests it properly and puts the stuff in the right boxes. But once you get all of that straightened out, at the end of the process, you'll have another thing that says, here's your resume, it's attached, and you can attach another file, or you can replace the resume with the one that looks good. Now, when you do that, if it barfs and it says, oh, now I have to repopulate everything because you changed it, I can't help it, man. Some of these systems are just dumber than a box of hammers. Thank you. But that's the way it goes. So you have two. You have the clean one, and you have the one that you can hand to somebody that looks nice. When you build your resumes, you're going to build yet another version. Don't ask. I have well over 30 different resumes right now. But the most important one that I have is what's called your curricula vitae, your CV, which is a resume of everything. If you're young, you don't need a CV. You probably don't need a CV. If you're older and you've bounced around a lot and done a lot of stuff, or you're going to court, you need a CV. Or you're academic, you need a CV. This is literally everything of value that you have ever done, ever. And they're useful for our resume constructions because when you apply to a job outside of your niche, you can go back to your CV and go, what did I do that works with this particular application? And when you apply for a job online, you're gonna look at that, what they're asking for, and if it's healthcare, it's gonna be one set of things from your CV, and if it's manufacturing, it's gonna be a different set of things from your CV. And the achievements in your CV may be the same thing, but the way it's phrased, the systems documentation, whatever, it's gonna be two different paragraphs that you're gonna give to them depending on what it is. And you can, if you're this kind of crazy about it, you can actually build logic structures that involve all of this different stuff. But you need one thing that has everything you've done, even though you're never gonna show it to anybody, because you'll forget. You'll try and whip out a resume on the fly for a manufacturing position, and you'll forget that time that you built the robotics thing at AT&T. And that might have been the one thing that got you the job. So you want that reference so you can go back and just remind yourself about what your opportunities were and what you did. Page 1 on your resumes is your work history. That's where you worked. It should be a narrative, the more into management that you are, or it should be a skills execution thing if you are still a line employee or somebody who is heads down type. But the more you get into management, the more it turns into narratives and outcomes. That's page 1. Then there's only one of those. Don't tell me you're so busy that you've got 2 pages of this because it's not important. The second page is your achievements, your givebacks, your certifications, and all the other garbage that is not work history. That's it, 2 pages. I don't want to ever see more than 2 pages. I shouldn't see less, but worst case, 2 pages. No one's going to read the 3rd page. As you go through the process, you will end up with a collection of resumes for different things, and at one point you'll probably go like, you know what, I could probably put the vertical stuff all into one. And you may assemble standard general resumes per vertical. Again, it depends on how long you're at this process and how many times you've gone through it. Because it's really handy to have a general healthcare resume, and it's really handy to have a general manufacturing resume if you've got that kind of experience and it fits in there, so you don't have to do it all the time. Now, the people that are on LinkedIn that are putting out those job apps, some of them are not what they seem. In fact, most of them are not what they seem, which is a sad testament, given that LinkedIn is the best opportunity we have for job applications. And even there, half of it's garbage. So there are different people out there that want your data just to get your data because they're building mining processes. There are body shops that are building resume libraries so that they can make people think that they have access to resources that they don't. There's all kinds of nefarious reasons. The easiest one is just identity theft. Those fake LinkedIn profiles that show up that we talk about in security that the Russian people are using to try and steal our money and our crypto. Where do you think they get that information from? Well, they look at other people's LinkedIn profiles, but you can't see everything. So a real easy way to collect a bunch of information, if I'm trying to drive into a particular market space, is just post a job and put an attractive salary on it and watch how many resumes you get. And now you can build profiles on people, which also is why you never put your personal information in your resume and you don't make that stuff available online, because these guys will use it against you. One of the skills that you need to develop when you're dealing with anything job application-wise online is the ability to tell whether or not it's real. Because applying for a bad one can be more problems than not applying for anything. Once your identity gets stolen, you have to go through that joy. But figuring out if it's real or not can be a tedious process. Some of these fakes are really good. I mean, we've got nation-state actors on there doing this, but that's rare, right? That's mostly rare. What you usually get is amateur hour. Bob from Valadonis.com just posted a job saying he's hiring for Bell & Howell. Well, he doesn't work for Bell & Howell, even though it's got their logo. When you go in, you're like, I want jobs from Bell & Howell. This fly's driving me nuts. And so neither does Valadonis. I just made it up, so. You're going to get that domain name now, aren't you? No. So when you look at a job advertisement, you have to first validate whether or not it's real. And that can be tricky. But there are certain low-hanging fruit type deals that you can go through, and this comes back to the optimization of your time slide. Pick the stuff that's easy. If you have any question about it at all, just ignore it for now. If it's great, if it looks like a good opportunity, put it in your queue. And after you've gone through all of the easy ones, which you'll never get through because there's so many, then you can come back to the ones that were a little bit weird, and you can spend some time digging into those. But don't waste a lot of time trying to figure out if something's real or not, if it's not obvious. If it's Bell & Howell and they're not from Bell & Howell and you can't confirm that they are from that company, then just ignore it. Now, AI has gotten really popular in the last couple months, with good reason. Unfortunately, it also has downsides. But for our purposes, it's great when you want to figure out what is important in the job request. So you can copy what's in there. There's places online that cover how to use this. The important pieces that I want to talk about are how to not use it. So you can use it to help construct your resume, and you can, most importantly, use it to practice. When you have a job that you're posting to that you're going to be interviewed through, ask the AI to help you with interview questions for paste this position. And it will develop a list of questions that you can develop answers for that help you respond during the interview process and be good about it. But never, ever, ever use the AI during the job interview. Because if we detect that, you're gone and you're blacklisted. And that's not good. And we can detect that. We don't have to hear the keyboard clicks, and we don't have to see the lag in your response time as you wait for an answer to that question. It's because we already put the questions in as managers, as hiring managers, and we know what we're expecting. And we know which ones are hard and require thought and which ones require work. And if you happen to come up with the exact same answer or something that very closely mirrors what I'm getting from my AI inputs, that's also going to be a problem. That may force me to dig deeper. And you don't want that. Nobody wants to create doubt. So don't use it during the process. It's better to not know the answer and just admit, I don't know the answer to that question. That's the sort of thing that I figure out. I go to my books, I go to my references, whatever. Just understand that you could get asked a technical question that you don't know the answer to. And if I ask you a technical question and there's a lag and then you know the answer, I know you're using an AI. And I have trick questions that I absolutely know that nobody knows, but as a technical person, you'll think that you should, and you will guilt yourself into using the AI to answer the question. Catches them every time. But as practice tools, they are marvelous. I love using those things as practice tools. All right, so making ourselves look better to make the process more efficient. You've got your LinkedIn, keep it clean, keep it accurate, make sure it matches your resume, but what else are we doing here to make everything right? You should be aware of your public image on the internet. So in addition to what's on LinkedIn, if your Facebook profile is still public at this time, there are other issues here that we should address. If you've got tweets out there that may be embarrassing from back when you were in high school, that's probably something that we should get cleaned up. Anything that could potentially come out during the process and interfere with your hiring, even years down the road. I've done some presentations as part of the hacker community that would be referred to in many circles as questionable. Is that legal? Well, yes, if you're working for the government and you're allowed to do that. Anybody else? No. So there can be things in your past that are circulating that you might not like. See if you can get them cleaned up. But by and large, everybody pretty much stops at LinkedIn. They might look for Twitter, they might look for Facebook, and employers are not supposed to dig into your background like that, but they do. So be aware. And if you have stuff like that, get it cleaned up. Now, as a positive aspect here, we do want to encourage you to use this stuff. Use these social media platforms, use them to get content out. Why? Because it puts a polish on you and your place in this particular hierarchy that you're applying to. If you're trying to get into a healthcare vertical, then I better see some posts on your background here about healthcare stuff. If you don't have a history of working in healthcare, but you're telling me you have experience in the sector, then how come there's no material any place in your background on healthcare? So you can prime the engine if you want to change verticals by pushing material content, by pushing content out into social media in the vertical space you want to go to. You want to get out of manufacturing and you want to get into product sales. How many minutes now? Oh, good. So this is one way where you can manage to change verticals, which can be a difficult thing the higher up you go. Especially when you're looking at changing whole career fields, you want to prime that engine by getting some content out there. The nice thing about content is that it doesn't have to be good. What's the fastest way to find out the answer to a question on the internet? Yes, post the wrong answer. Do it in a limited group because we don't need to see that on CNN later, but there's places to ask these things. And if you ask them right, you never have to be afraid of using stupid questions. I do this all the time as teaching exercises in some of the groups that I'm in. I ask leading questions. I forget which Greek philosopher it was that teaches like this. Socrates, okay, the Socratic method, yeah. Yeah, you ask questions that prompt thought and get input. And what makes this useful is not just that you're engaging with your audience and getting new connections. When you ask a question and you find someone who's interested, like manufacturing, you make a connection. And that connection can lead to other job opportunities. So it's a good way to add connections in there. But it's also a great way to generate new content, because we don't know everything. And almost every book that has ever been published in history is nothing but an aggregation of other people's knowledge. All of us stand on the shoulders of giants. So there's no shame whatsoever in asking a question and then looking at the answers, repackaging them, and saying, here is a product or a question and a solution. I mean, I wouldn't want to wholesale just copy people's slides or copy things that people have done before. We want to get input and make something new. We want to add our flavor to it. Like you could talk about, what were they doing upstairs? Telecommunications things, specific to the healthcare environment. But you don't have to get that information from there. You can go just talk to telecom hackers and get some input from them and then apply it to the market that you know. That's useful. But you get that information by soliciting input and then repackaging it and turning it into material for content that pushes to your social media, that makes you look better to potential employers. Portfolios are only important if you work in an industry that it's useful in, software being one of them. And you can make this even better by using more specialized stuff. You can tack on things. You see this on LinkedIn a lot. If people are unemployed, they'll post like, I just got this cert. I just read this book. I just saw this movie, whatever it is. And that's doing two things. One, it's showing you that they're active. It's putting out keywords on their profile that may pop out on a recruiter search. And it's introducing, or it's letting people know that they're interested in a particular topic. So it serves a variety of purposes. It's not just look at me, especially if it's like really valuable, like MBA skills or something like that. The other thing is that talking like this in public forums exposes you to criticism. It helps train you in better ways to communicate. Well, thanks for that. Yeah. So we'll talk about being harassed in presentations next. Being able to think on your feet, being able to be responsible, being able to, most importantly, being aware of the emotional context and having the emotional intelligence when you engage with these audiences is vital, because we look for that these days. Nobody is interested in hiring hackers from the old school where you put us in a room and you slide pizza under the door and you just don't engage, don't talk to them. It's called The Bastard Operator from Hell. If you ever want to read some funny material, go look up at the old Bastard Operator from Hell. I'll give you a quick example. Hey, I need 2 megs of space. Well, I already gave you 2 megs of space. Well, yeah, but I need 2 more. So you need 2 megs of free space. Yeah. Okay, there you go. Wait, where are all my files? You got 2 megs of free space now, don't you? Right. I didn't want to just adapt it for modern. It's an old thing. But adding stuff into your collection of publication materials, posts, and whatnot gives you some focus that makes you even more attractive. So understand, look at other people. Look at what they're doing. We'll get into it in a minute, find other people that are doing what you want to do and look at what they're publishing. Now go do that. And for those of us that are still actively employed, this is not something that ever stops. This is something that we do all the time. You can do it at a lower volume. I mean, it's not your job now, you have a job. So maybe once a week, make sure that you post some fresh content on LinkedIn. Maybe once a week, actually post some legit content. Have a hobby, for God's sakes, that has to do with what you do for a living, and post about that stuff. Keep engaged with the social media experience, because when you need it, it will already be there. If you just fire up Twitter when you're job hunting, it's not going to help you much. And then that list there, that's a way to build on what you do over time. and make it useful. And of course, the best way to finance anything is to have your employer pay for it. So that's why it's usually relative to what we do. But it does not have to be. Now for the good part, job boards. Hands down, LinkedIn's the best. Dice and Indeed, they're okay. You'll get more noise the further you get from LinkedIn. And LinkedIn's bad enough. But if you go to Dice compared to LinkedIn, oh my God. And do not ever, ever put your resume up on any of these things for public consumption. Dice will ask you, like, would you like to put that out so more people notice you? Do not do it. Do not. You'll get more spam. Yeah.
I did that in 2007, and I took it down in 2008, and I'm still getting spam.
Yeah. Well, change your email address, Mr. AOL.
I did.
But other things work to a greater or lesser extent. Again, this comes back to focusing on the most effective means possible to get a job. Start with LinkedIn. If you actually run out of jobs to apply for in LinkedIn and you have additional time, then you can start poking around in other areas. Things like Google are like a last resort. Every once in a blue moon, maybe once a month, it pops out something that actually works. But for the most part, it's those guys, and that's the way it works. And there are others. I just couldn't list them all. And now the fundamental problem with boards that I alluded to earlier, if you look at the dialog box on the right, that will say, it's a Wall Street Journal article, that will quite clearly point out that at least 25% of all job listings, even the respectable ones from Bell & Howell, are fake. Not fake as in it didn't come from Bell & Howell, but fake as in they're not really hiring. That's out there because it makes the employees feel good that they are overworking, that have vacancies in their department, that are complaining about being overworked. Look, we're trying to hire, it's just we can't find anybody. Well, there's 400 applicants, I don't know why you can't find anybody. So the business may use it for some purpose, HR may use it for another purpose. Google was notorious for hiring people and then parking them on a bench. And they were also notorious for putting out resume or job apps that didn't actually go to any real jobs. So there's different ways that they use it to influence what's going on when they're that big. And if you're a company that's going to be acquired and you're looking at getting Revision C funding or some sort of money, getting a buyer, whatever it is, and you want to puff yourself up and make yourself look good, well, then you might hire for these people. They might ask you, do you have a corporate compliance officer? Well, yes, we're hiring a new one even as we speak. It's all fake. And we have to wade through this stuff. So about half of it is garbage. And just knowing that ahead of time will make you feel much better about 100 rejection notices. The other problem is that you're one amongst hundreds. Networking is really the key here. Personal networking, which is the next section, is the best, hands down way to get a new job. So there's a lot of garbage there. And we talked about public posting, don't do it. All right, the important part, networking. Networking is the single most valuable tool that we have and is also professionally useful in a variety of ways. It is also documented science that people who are good at networking have the best results in their personal lives. So this is not something that you can ignore because you're a programmer like I was and you want pizza slipped under the door. Just go away. I don't want to talk to you. You can work your way out of it. Trust me, I've done it. We need to be aware of the networks that we have. We need to know who's in them and what their role is, what their functions are. Even if you're just running this stuff in the back of your mind in a subset of your lizard brain or whatnot, you need to be aware of how your networks work and where they are and what they are, because this is vital to your success. The importance of networking here aligns directly with your professional success, so we have to pay attention to it. And just like any other skill, we can get better at it if we're not good at it, and we can become experts at it if we are good at it. Some people are naturals. More power to you. I hate you guys. And the rest of us have to claw and climb our way out from behind the pizza box pile. But it's possible. Anyone can do it. It's just a skill. And the reason that networking is so important and the reason it works is really simple. Because we value trust over ability. So I will hire for an open position based on trust in a relationship, knowing that you're not the best person for the job, but that you can do it, over somebody who is an expert that I don't know, because I don't trust them. And my reputation as the hiring manager may be on the line. And on a networking component, if I recommend you based on that networking thing, then that's shared trust. You now get to use my trust with this guy over here as your trust. Don't abuse that. Back to that, hey, it's 6 weeks and I'm leaving. Well, don't do that. That's bad. But trust is the most important component in our network of relationships, and it's the one that gets you the job, aside from the ones that just drop into your lap and things like that. So the values we bring affect the quality of the relationship, and this is key to making this stuff work for you, and this is the most important aspect of job hunting. Presumption on our part about a relationship or about what the other person thinks the relationship is can get us into trouble, though. So be aware that what you think the relationship is may not be what they think the relationship is. And you see this a lot in sales relationships. We invite a sales guy in with a great bond, we buy the product, we're happy, we're going golfing with this guy, everything's cool, and then 6 months down the line, the product's not working and the salesman isn't picking up the phone. Because what you thought was a friendship, and in the friend zone, for him was just I'm in the quarterly bonus zone. So you need to understand how it works in both directions and not just assume that what you think the relationship is the relationship. That presumption can get you into trouble, as can the situational awareness involved in it. Be aware of who you're talking to and the environment that you're talking to them in. Hacker conferences are one thing. Conferences in nice colleges are another. We use two different sets of verbs, and there's a reason for that. So networking, I'll bust through this quick because it's all online in this diagram. It gets old after 4 slides, but you break your networks down into different segments. You can do it however you want, but generally speaking, it's going to be professionally, emotionally, and socially. Different people in your life are going to fall into different circles there. You might have some overlap. It might be good. Your professional circle is almost always going to be the largest of the sector. And this is not acquaintances. This is people that you talk to on a regular basis. So don't think I can put 1,000 people in there. I must be winning this game. It's not how it works. This is people that you have regular contact with. It might only be once a year, but it's still you're aware, I haven't talked to Bob in a long time. I need to call Louise because I haven't spoken to her in ages and I don't know what's going on there. They're relationships that you want to maintain for some reason. So there's a limited amount of time available to you, which means there's a limited size here. For example, the socially beneficial network, this is going out with friends, having fun, going to D&D games, whatever it is you're doing on the weekends for fun, maybe evenings. There's a limit to how much time that you can spend on that. Let's say 4 hours, maybe 8 hours if you're young and don't have a lot of priorities or children yet. But if you do the math on this, it works out to being about 13 people max that you can put into the socially beneficial zone and maintain any sort of consistency. And I'm being rushed through this. I'm sorry. I tried to get this small enough. It is all online, though. The diagram tells us how to treat people, the characteristics that are in there. The important piece here is the last piece that I'll cover here is that the red dots. Everybody's got red dots. These are people in your life that you have to maintain contact with that you don't like, that they are a problem, a drag, whatnot. The uncle that constantly asks for money, the employer that you really wish you didn't work for, whatever it is, there's a negative aspect to it and you would change it if you could, but you can't. But you still have to maintain the relationship. All right. Your career arc ties into this. Knowing where people fall into here tells you whether or not somebody is a peer or a peer plus. And we network differently with peer plus. They are very desirable connections because they are above us in some way. They have an advantage to dealing with them in some way. It could be somebody who's legit higher on the ladder, or it could be somebody who's socially higher, like a religious leader or something like that. But knowing where you sit in there is important to managing the relationship. Expanding your network is really easy. All you have to do is ask, literally. Like we talked about earlier, engage with Q&A, except when you're doing it at a peer plus level, they want to talk to you. If you come to me and ask me, how do I do X? And it seems like something that you're genuinely interested in, I'm more than happy to share with you. We all want to help other people. It's built into human nature. So you can get other people to network with you quite easily by just asking for help. That's all you have to do. That's kind of what we just covered. And then you can turn it into blog posts, blah, blah, blah. Networking mistakes, don't abuse it. Don't just assume that it's always going to be there for you. And don't forget to provide some sort of value. Bring something to the relationship. That's why salespeople show up with donuts initially, because they have not demonstrated value yet. So here, have some food. That's value. There's different pieces on that. So, okay, that's all of the material basically. Here's a checklist that you can use as a starting point for doing job hunts and making sure that you hit all this stuff. This is where all the materials are. So if you're gonna hit one of these barcodes or type in tiny URL BP6WEE45, that gets you to the SharePoint that has all of the garbage on it. The link will expire, so be aware of that. But you can always ask me on LinkedIn. I'll be glad to hit you whatever the latest information is. And questions and discussions, there's my LinkedIn, but I'll also go back there because nobody ever gets it. There's always someone that hasn't got it yet. So questions? Oh, we're out of time. No, go ahead. Thank you.
All right, I'm a midget, so I'm going to pull this down a little bit. So 2 comments. One on the networking. Josh here.
Mr. Networking.
Well, pretty much, yes, that was exactly the comment. I got into B-Sides, first con that I'd ever gone to, which did some other things because he overheard me having a conversation with somebody else. The other comment is I've communicated with you on LinkedIn several times, and believe me, a lot of the networking or just even comments, back and forth with something, it may not be something on point or you have something looking at, but you post a lot of content out there or comment on a lot of things. It's very helpful just, watching you on different things. The question I had, if you go back about 2 slides, there was something on camping. Could you talk about what you're defining, right there, what camping is as far as networking and under a mistake?
Just relying on the assumption that that network will be there, that those people will still talk to you even if you ignore them for a year or whatever length of time it is, assuming that that value will persist. And it works in certain circles better than others. Like in the military zone, I have certain people that I could not talk to them for 10 years, and then we can go out and it's just like we left. But there's a shared value system there and a shared background. So different people have different camping limits, but don't assume that a relationship will just maintain itself. You have to engage, at least sometimes.
Hi, Brian.
Hi.
How do you engage with your network without looking like a utilitarian? Like you reach them just when you need something, or you text them only when you need something?
When's the last time you called a friend?
Who's giving this presentation?
Very recently.
Okay, that's how.
But then sometimes it looks like you're just reaching out to them only when you need something.
When's the last time you called a friend and said, hey, how are you? That's it.
So that's what camping is kind of about. Is we've got different groups and stuff all over the different media complexes that involve different aspects of it, like hardware manufacturing and stuff. If I need a motor for my Ender 3 printer and I need it today, I can reach out to a network. And if all I ever do is talk to that network about needing stuff, they're gonna notice. That will get remarked upon. So you have to contribute back, you have to engage. Even if it's just volunteering at a con.
That is all the time we have.
I'll be outside if anybody wants anything.